I closed my eyes and let out a deep sigh while mentally reviewing the preparation list for tomorrow's barbecue party. It was early morning in my kitchen in Cincinnati's upscale Hyde Park neighborhood, with the aroma of coffee wafting through the air. Our 15-year-old colonial-style house looked like a picture-perfect upper-middle-class residence from the street, complete with a well-maintained lawn, white picket fence, and a wooden deck stretching across the backyard. From the kitchen window, I could see the tree-lined avenue extending toward Eden Park. The gentle May morning sunlight illuminated the tulip bed. Emily should still be sleeping upstairs. "Mom, what time should I go to bed tonight?" I couldn't help but smile at the sudden voice behind me. My 7-year-old daughter Emily had apparently come downstairs without my noticing. She was wearing her light pink Disney princess pajamas, still rubbing her sleepy eyes. She was remarkably bright for a second grader and popular in her class. "Good morning, Emily. Since tomorrow is a special day, you should go to bed early tonight," I answered while gently stroking her messy blonde hair. "Tomorrow is Sunday, a barbecue party with both grandmothers invited." Emily's eyes sparkled. "Will Daddy and Mommy and both grandmas all cook meat in the garden?" "Yes, we'll have steaks and hamburgers, all your favorites." As I spoke, I let out a small sigh inside. Sure, on the surface, it looked like an ideal family gathering. My husband James works at an investment bank. He's a typical workaholic who switches to work mode the instant his phone rings, even on holidays. I could hear him on the phone in his upstairs study even now. Working on holidays was the norm for him, and I always felt lonely seeing him prioritize work over family time. And tomorrow, my husband's mother Barbara and my mother Patricia would be meeting. Just thinking about it made my stomach heavy. Barbara lives nearby and frequently visits, always commenting on my housekeeping and parenting. "You should put more vegetables in Emily's lunch, or the way these bookshelves are arranged will collect dust." As a former successful real estate agent, she always demands perfection. My husband invariably takes his mother's side. "Mom's just worried about you," he says. But he doesn't understand that this only hurts me more. After 15 years of marriage, this issue remains unresolved. Meanwhile, my relationship with my mother Patricia has been strained since the inheritance issue 20 years ago. My father died suddenly in an accident, and while most of the inheritance went to my mother, her attitude changed completely afterward. Now she lives alone in a modest apartment. There's no trace left of her former self when she worked as a nurse, and whenever we meet, she seems somehow closed off. To think that these two would meet at the senior center's gardening class, it was like a nightmare for me. I honestly couldn't imagine how their relationship might be. "Hey Mom, I'll help." Emily's cheerful voice rescued me from my spiral of dark thoughts. My daughter, showing kindness beyond her 7 years, sometimes seems to sense her mother's feelings. As an elementary school teacher myself, I can see that Emily's thoughtfulness is special, even compared to my other students. Thank you, Emily. Would you like to help me choose the tablecloth first? Just as Emily nodded enthusiastically, I heard my husband's footsteps coming down from upstairs. He was probably preparing for another day of weekend work. He would head off to work, just like any other holiday. Tomorrow's barbecue will be fine. It has to be a peaceful Sunday afternoon. I tried to convince myself of this as I started preparing breakfast. The next day, our family was bustling around with barbecue party preparations from early morning. "Sarah, is the charcoal ready?" James called out from in front of the grill. My husband was dressed casually for once in a polo shirt and cargo pants. Surprisingly, he hadn't received any work calls. "Yes, it's right there. I bought ice too, so the drinks will stay plenty cold." As I answered, I checked the backyard through the kitchen window. Emily was playing on her new swing, her light blue dress with Disney's Ariel print swaying in the breeze. "Grandma Barbara's car," Emily suddenly shouted. Sure enough, my mother-in-law's silver Lexus was gliding into the parking space. She was 30 minutes earlier than usual. Barbara appeared carrying shopping bags in both hands. She wore a pastel blue dress with a pearl necklace. Her impeccable appearance hadn't changed. I brought coleslaw and my special marinade. And lemonade, Emily's favorite. As I watched her laying out dish after dish on the table, I felt conflicted. Barbara's cooking skills were undeniable. But sometimes, this perfectionism becomes overwhelming. "I want Grandma's lemonade." As Emily ran over, Barbara's face lit up with a broad smile. There was no doubting her love for her granddaughter. "Of course, dear, but after lunch." Just then, another car arrived. It was my mother's car. She emerged in her usual modest attire, carrying a large Tupperware container. "This is potato salad. Emily's favorite recipe." My mother's voice sounded somehow weak. When she met Barbara's eyes, they exchanged slight nods. At 2 in the afternoon, the barbecue was in full swing. James started grilling the meat. The savory smoke from the Angus beef steaks wafted across the entire garden. "Emily, how's school? You said you wanted to be a teacher, right?" When Barbara asked, Emily happily began talking about events at school. I listened while finishing the salad arrangement. "I want to be a teacher like Mommy." At Emily's words, I thought I saw my mother's expression cloud over slightly. She had once opposed my becoming a teacher, wanting me to pursue a more lucrative career. As the meal progressed, conversation gradually expanded. Centered around Emily, the atmosphere seemed pleasant on the surface. But the occasional glances exchanged between James and Barbara felt somehow unnatural. "Sarah, isn't this steak a bit undercooked?" My mother's words froze the atmosphere for a moment. "No, it's cooked just right," Barbara immediately countered. I pretended not to notice the tension flowing between them. That's when Emily took a bite of the potato salad. My mother's special recipe. But something was different. The color was slightly. "Mommy, my stomach." Suddenly, Emily's face contorted in pain. She stopped near the swing, clutching her stomach. As I tried to rush to her, a violent dizziness struck me. My vision began to distort. My feet grew unsteady. James's voice echoed from far away. I desperately tried to turn toward Emily, but my body wouldn't respond. As consciousness slipped away, I heard my husband and mother-in-law's conversation as if from a distant place. It will look like just an accident. Before I could understand the meaning of those words, my consciousness was completely enveloped in darkness. The last thing I saw was Emily collapsing onto the lawn. And my mother's hard expression. The Sunday afternoon that should have been peaceful had suddenly transformed into a nightmare. The smell of antiseptic, regular mechanical beeps, and faint footsteps in the hallway. These were the first things I noticed as consciousness began to return. My eyelids felt heavy. When I tried to move, I felt an 4 needle in my left hand. As my vision gradually became clearer, I realized I was in a private room at Cincinnati Memorial Hospital. Emily. When I called my daughter's name in a hoarse voice, a nurse approached. "Mrs. Thompson, you're awake. I'll call the doctor." My daughter. Emily is resting in the next room. She hasn't regained consciousness yet, but her condition is stable. Those words brought slight relief. But the next moment, my final memory from the barbecue came flooding back. Those words. "May I speak with you?" The person who entered the room was a detective wearing a nameplate reading Laura Martinez. Sharp eyes gleamed within her composed demeanor. "Are you able to discuss the incident?" Incident. That word resonated heavily in my chest. Yes. I'm fine. I tried to sit up slightly. The nurse helped me. "We have the test results," Detective Martinez continued, carefully choosing her words. "There's evidence that poison was deliberately mixed into the food." At that moment, my body shook as if struck by an electric current. Poison. Mixed in. Deliberately. Each word approached with terrifying meaning. Specifically, it was a processed form of commercially available herbicide. While not a lethal dose, it was enough to potentially cause serious health damage. The detective continued her explanation. In my mind, the events of that Sunday played like a film reel. My mother's potato salad. The glances between my husband and mother-in-law. And those words. "It will look like just an accident." Detective Martinez's eyes grew even sharper. "We've already interviewed your husband and mother-in-law. However, there are several concerning points in their testimonies." Just then, hurried footsteps were heard from the hallway. "Emily has woken up." A young nurse had come to report. I immediately tried to get up from the bed. "You shouldn't move yet. Please let me see my daughter." The detective and nurse exchanged glances, and after a brief silence, they agreed to bring a wheelchair. In the next room, Emily lay in a hospital bed too large for her small frame. Though pale, her eyes were definitely open. When I grabbed my daughter's hand, tears began to flow. "It's okay, you're safe now." Just then, there was a sound in the hallway. When I turned around, James and Barbara were standing there. Their expressions carried a tension I'd never seen before. "Sarah, we need to." The moment my husband tried to step forward, Detective Martinez stepped between us. "Mrs. Thompson, you and your daughter are currently under police protection." At those words, James's face froze. Barbara drew in a thin breath. Actually, an interesting video was recorded on the Johnson family's security camera next door. The detective quietly continued. "It shows your mother-in-law and husband having what appears to be a secret conversation in the backyard Sunday morning. And a small package that seems to have been received from Patricia." Barbara interrupted with a raised voice. "We didn't." The detective calmly continued. "The details of your life insurance policy were also very interesting." Just then, my mother entered, accompanied by a police officer. Her expression showed not a trace of remorse. "Patricia Wilson," Detective Martinez addressed her. "Important evidence was also found at your home." My mother stared at me. In her eyes was the same cold light I'd seen 20 years ago during the inheritance dispute. 2 more police officers entered the room. The situation was about to develop rapidly. Detective Martinez spoke in a quiet but firm tone. "There are still facts you need to know." Those words heavily foreshadowed the weight of the truth about to be revealed. The interrogation room at Cincinnati Police Headquarters was much smaller than I'd imagined. Gray walls, a metal table, and only recording equipment in the stark space. Next to Detective Martinez, I clasped my trembling hands in my lap. Across from me sat my husband James. His hair, usually well-groomed, was now disheveled. In just 48 hours of detention, he seemed to have aged years. "I'll tell everything." With those words, a long confession began. "It wasn't planned from the beginning," James continued while staring at the water glass on the table. "Mother heard the story from Patricia. The truth about the inheritance 20 years ago." I caught my breath. Father's inheritance. That was where it all began. That accident. James carefully chose his words. It was apparently orchestrated by Patricia. Sarah's father, she. "Wait," I burst out. "Mother killed father." Detective Martinez quietly produced some documents. New photos from the accident scene 20 years ago have been discovered. And in the diary found in Patricia's apartment, there's an entry from the day before the accident describing how she tampered with her husband's car brakes. My head spun. Father's death wasn't an accident. Patricia then kept all the inheritance for herself. Sarah should have had rightful claim to it, James continued. Mother discovered this at the senior center. The interrogation room door opened, and Barbara, who had been questioned in another room, entered. Wearing the gray prison-issued clothing, she was unrecognizable from her usually elegant self. "It was my fault," Barbara's voice trembled. "When I met Patricia and learned her true nature, I was furious. To think that my precious son's wife was the daughter of such a person." "So you sought revenge?" Detective Martinez asked coolly. "At first, I just wanted to corner Patricia. But she..." Barbara's words faltered. "She saw through our plan and turned it against us." The truth bloomed like an ugly flower. The meeting at the senior center wasn't coincidental. My mother had deliberately approached Barbara, then skillfully hinted at the truth about my father's death. Using her knowledge as a former nurse, she even suggested methods for poison preparation, creating a perfect alibi of the unfortunate accident of daughter and son-in-law. Everything had been my mother's meticulous plan. Patricia was manipulating you both from the start, Detective Martinez said. Among the evidence found in her apartment was this. The detective produced an old photograph. It was from my father's funeral 20 years ago. In it, my mother wore what appeared to be a satisfied expression. She had been planning the perfect revenge for years, the detective quietly continued. Using even her own daughter as a pawn. A cruel, but perfect plan. Meeting with my mother in detention. Through the clear acrylic barrier, I asked. Why, even Emily? Mother answered as if it were obvious. I wanted you to experience the pain of losing someone precious too. That cold voice seemed impossible to belong to the mother who had once wrapped me in love. For 20 years, I prepared little by little. Meeting Barbara, the gardening at the senior center, everything went according to plan. When I saw that arrogant woman looking down on my daughter, I knew. This family would surely dance to my tune. But why go so far? Your father tried to take everything from me. Mother's eyes took on a strange light. He asked for divorce and even demanded property division. But with his accidental death, I ended up getting everything instead. But that wasn't enough. You look just like him. At that moment, everything connected. Mother's abnormal obsession, the inheritance dispute, and this incident. It all began with father's death 20 years ago. The diary found in mother's apartment contained surprisingly detailed plans. Methods for herbicide preparation, plans to approach Barbara, and creating perfect alibis after eliminating me and Emily. A perfect plan utilizing her knowledge as a former nurse. There wasn't a shred of maternal love for me to be found. We have sufficient evidence, Detective Martinez announced. Patricia Wilson, James Thompson, and Barbara Thompson. All three will be charged with attempted murder and conspiracy. The fluorescent lights in the interrogation room cast our shadows on the floor. Those shadows seemed distorted, like ghosts of the past. Barbara continued her confession through tears. I just wanted to protect James. Before I knew it, we had become part of her plan. Mom. James spoke in a strained voice. I really did love Sarah. But I was misled by your words. Just then, a small voice came from the hallway. Mommy. Emily stood there, accompanied by a police officer. She had progressed from a wheelchair to using a cane, though she hadn't fully recovered. Still, her eyes shone with strength. Let's go home, I said while staying close to Emily. I knew the new life ahead wouldn't be easy. But for now, I would focus only on protecting my daughter before me. That was the only thing I could do. A year has passed. In Cincinnati's East Walnut Hills, a quiet residential area. My new house with Emily is much smaller than before. But it has a kitchen filled with morning sunlight and a small garden where we planted tulips. That's enough. Mom, look. The buds are swelling. Emily calls from the garden. She's now in 3rd grade. Since that day, we've had regular sessions with Kate, the psychotherapist. At first, there were many nights of crying, and I too spent sleepless nights. But slowly, surely, we're moving forward. You're right. Spring is almost here. I step into the garden with my work bag. It's still chilly on this late February morning. I've finally gotten used to teaching at my new school. Are you going to see Kate today after school? Yes, but it's the last time. She says you'll be fine now. My daughter thought for a moment before quietly nodding. Yesterday, the final sentencing was announced. Mother received 25 years for attempted murder and conspiracy, James got 10 years, and Barbara 8 years of actual prison time. The newspapers and TV called it the Cincinnati barbecue incident and gave it extensive coverage. When the sentence was read, Patricia's expression never changed in the courtroom. Perhaps everything had gone according to her plan since Father's death 20 years ago. Except for one miscalculation at the very end, Emily's recovery. Defendant Patricia Wilson, the judge's voice resonated. Your actions represent a cruel betrayal directed at your beloved family. In particular, involving your innocent granddaughter is absolutely unforgivable. Mother just smiled coldly. Meanwhile, James and Barbara showed deep remorse. Barbara especially shed tears every time she mentioned Emily's name. To think I hurt my granddaughter, what have I done? Their letters of apology remain unopened, stored away in the back of my bookshelf. Someday, when Emily is older and wants to read them of her own accord, that time may come. I'll wait until then. Sarah, good morning. Linda, our next-door neighbor, calls over the fence. I was initially anxious about neighborhood relationships when we moved here. But the people in this neighborhood have warmly welcomed us. Emily, are you ready for school? Yes. My daughter bounds out wearing her backpack. It's only recently that she's been able to run around energetically like before. As we get into the car, I remember. After the incident, my fellow teachers and students' parents provided surprisingly strong support. Hospital visits, help with moving, and most importantly, they watched over us warmly without ever placing blame. The day we planted the first tulips in our new garden's flower bed. When Emily gripped her small shovel and said, "Mom, this is our new garden, isn't it?" I felt tears welling up unexpectedly. Letters from prison arrive almost monthly. From James and Barbara, sincere apologies and regret. And from Mother, the same self-justification as always. But I'm not afraid anymore. Someday, you'll understand how I feel. That's what Mother said during our final meeting. But I know better. There's no need to understand. I just need to keep looking forward and living. We arrive at Emily's school. Have a good day. See you later. My daughter's smile reflects in the rearview mirror. The swing that used to be in our old backyard is gone now. But in this new place, we're creating new memories, slowly but surely. By the time the tulips bloom, I'm sure we'll be even stronger. Believing this, I begin driving toward the school where I teach. Though the sky is still slightly gray, beyond it stretches the unmistakable blue of spring.